Guys, it's good to be with you again. And we are in the book of Romans, chapter 7, talking a little bit about sanctification, the separating of ourselves from our old life and becoming more and more like Jesus. Now, we understand that this whole process of our salvation began with justification, that we're made just or righteous. So as soon as you come to faith, you're made righteous, but we still have to deal with the sins in our lives that we haven't really, sometimes we've not really associated that this was the extent of my sin, or we don't see the root of that sin, and so it keeps on coming back from time to time. And we find this coming out more and more in our spiritual walk when we see a crisis happening, when we see turmoil, when we see things that we don't like. It begins to upset us, and we begin to act more in the flesh sometimes, because if it's not um, taken care of, it comes up. And I believe the reason why we're seeing such a turmoil in our world today is God is producing, out of all the garbage that's coming out in the world, the ability for us to now get it out of our lives, turn from it, and become more and more like the Lord. So even though we see a lot of bad things happening in our world, it's also beneficiary, because it's like it's taking the dross. It's God's heating things up, and the dross or the sin in our life is coming to the overflow, and we're able to deal with it. But now there's a lot of people that won't deal with it, and those people are, I call them either lukewarm or lost. So let's take a look at the word here on our board, on the scripture, and let's just read together, and you'll see what I'm talking about. In verse 18, for I know that nothing good dwells in me, that is, in my flesh. For I have the desire to do what is right. I do have a desire. I want to do right, he says, but not the ability to carry it out. Why? Because the sin is operating in my life. It's not who I am, but I still see it there. It's this old nature. And he goes on in verse 19, for I do not do, he said, for I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want is what I keep doing. It has a stronghold in my life. Well, this is what God is bringing to the table here. He's showing us, when he shows you these things, what is it that keeps on controlling my life? When you begin to see that, he says that's when you're able to deal with it. You couldn't deal with it before. So knowing that you have this problem is God's way of sanctifying you from it, separating you from it, bringing it to the cross. And that's all I want to share with you. Don't get down or discouraged when you see all this sin happening in your life. Deal with it. Get to the root. Bring it to the cross. Paul goes on, he says, now if I do what I do not want, it is no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells within me. In other words, Paul says, I'm not under the ownership of this sin, but it's still operating in my life. And I find myself feeling, and he goes on down through here, and he says, oh, wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from this body of death? And so, I want to just leave here and just say to you, don't get discouraged or down. There's a way out. We're going to talk about that next time. That God has, this is all part of God's design. He wants you to become more and more like him. And so he's bringing the dross to the forefront so you can deal with it. Confess it, bring it to the cross, and then live in the newness of life. Little by little, year by year, there's more and more stuff in our lives. He's wanting to clean you up. It never stops until we're come to the place of glory. Guys, I hope you have a great week. I'll talk to you next time. God bless.